Welcome to Healthcare IT Today. I'm John Lynn, together with my colleague and friend Colin Hung. The world of technology and healthcare, ever changing in new and novel ways, and that's why we love this stuff. So join us as we discuss the latest healthcare and health IT news, meshed together in new ways, which help generate new ideas and new perspectives. Plus, we'll have a little fun along the way. Today, we're going to be putting the spotlight on healthcare startups and founders. And be sure to follow the show on social media at the hashtag HITSM and our personal accounts at TechGuy and at Colin_Hung. Plus, check out our 19 years of health IT content at healthcareittoday.com. So what do you think, Colin? You've worked startups, you've worked big companies, you've worked media now. I guess we're kind of a startup. What's your preference?
Yeah, I mean, I love working at small companies. So I think it's startup, it means different things to different people, right? It could mean like
Sure.
you got like no customers, you got an idea in a garage, right? Like, but so not that. That's way too early,
You haven't
but
tried that
definitely.
yet, but
Yeah, well, yeah, but
did you?
I have tried that, but it's
Okay.
not for me. It's not for me. But
Okay.
anyway, it is more fun when you know working at a smaller organization. Although I will say it is nice to have a very large marketing budget at a big company. So I do like that.
That does change. I mean, it's interesting. You still have to be just as creative, I think, with the large one, to make sure you use it effectively.
That's
But
true.
yeah, it's interesting for me. I've always thought that, healthcare IT today, healthcare seen the overarching company as a startup, but I'm the most risk-averse entrepreneur that exists, right? My form of entrepreneurship has just been content, right? That's what that's how we're building it. But it's interesting. I also a fun fact is for the last 15, 20 years, like following startups, reading venture capital bloggers and stuff like that is kind of, I almost like describe it as my hobby. Like it's my hobby, tracking it, understanding it, advising different health tech startups. So I think we both have that passion, right? Which is talking to them, understanding what they're doing, seeing the innovation, the naivety, the
Yeah,
excitement of what they're
all
doing.
all the above, the excitement, the drive,
The
the
fear.
scratch your head kind of value propositions. But anyway, but yeah, and hopefully this podcast will be and this episode will be valuable for people who are maybe already in the healthcare space or maybe thinking about jumping into the healthcare space. But we hope you learn something valuable today. So, John, let me ask you first, is this a good time for founders to start a business in healthcare?
I have mixed feelings, right? Like, I think as an entrepreneur, there's always opportunities. And if you're a true entrepreneur, you will find those opportunities and you're going to decide where are those opportunities and do it. And then on the other, another piece of it is the technology and the ability to execute at a high level using AI, using data, which we never had before, at least not in a digital format. They were stuck in paper charts. You couldn't use it, right? Like the communication networks that we have, the ability to execute and really build a product quickly has never been better. Like you literally can create amazing solutions so much quicker now than even 5, 10 years ago, right? So in that regard, it's still one of the most exciting times, I think. And healthcare is opening their eyes to the fact that, hey, we should not be left behind on this wave of AI. We need to use it. And so I think, the organizations are more open to it. So I think from that perspective, it's an amazing time as well. I think the challenge is that if you don't understand healthcare, it's a really challenging time to enter it. Plus, the economic situation of most healthcare organizations mean that they have budget challenges, they have long sales cycles. And, I heard one CIO say, if you haven't talked to me now, then forget about it for 18 months. Like you got to start now for another, 18 months from now, I can get you added to my budget and my plan to then eventually get it, 18 months, 2 years is implemented, like so that is the cycle, and many people don't want to do that and don't understand that that's how most healthcare organizations buy it. Sure, there's a slight direct to consumer, but we've seen the best direct to consumer are the faux pharmacy companies that are delivering drugs through some virtual visit with a doctor that I don't know how that plays out. But outside of that, like the direct to consumer healthcare maybe some, I guess if you do meditation and things like that have kind of been direct to consumer, but like hardcore actual care and provider care, it's just that's such a really hard time right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think, I don't think there's a bad time to go into healthcare, nor do I think there's a good time to come into healthcare. I think
Yeah,
it just sort of is, right? Like it isn't very cyclical. It doesn't sort of
it's not
follow.
going away.
Yeah, it's not going away. It is growing. I mean, I think that's why people get excited about maybe coming into healthcare.
Yep.
And certainly one of the things I hear a lot from founders or would-be founders, when you look at healthcare, there's a lot of stuff that's wrong, right? There's a lot of stuff that looks backwards, is totally inefficient and shouldn't be, right? And especially when you compare it to other industries like, finance, travel, hospitality, etc. But
Shouldn't
that,
be as the hard phrase though, right?
yeah, but
Like it
that's a,
shouldn't be until you learn about it and you're like, oh, now I understand
yeah,
why it is.
but that's the thing that I run into a lot with founders that certainly I work with or I talk to is that, you know, and I try to tell this to people who are thinking about coming to this industry is like, just because it's inefficient and doesn't look right and it's horribly backwards and antiquated, doesn't mean that it's not, that a better solution didn't come along already. Is meaning it's not that healthcare hasn't adopted because no one has thought about like maybe modernizing this. It's because there's probably some other forces at play that you probably aren't aware of, like reimbursement restrictions, or the fact that this is, it's a non-funded part of healthcare. Like no one, meaning there's no one really who pays to fix this problem, who owns this problem. It's not because the technology didn't exist or like no one thought about it. And I think that's what traps a lot of founders is they see something, go, oh, well, I can fix that. I can just take something from the southern industry and apply it here. I'm like, well, yeah, in theory. And by the way, there have been 20 other people who have tried this, and there's just, you can't make a go of it. Anyway, but so I think because of that, and as you pointed out, there's no bad time to get into healthcare because we do have lots of challenges. We do have needs, and there's always new technology that's coming out that maybe can be successfully applied in this space. So I just think you have to be very careful on how you do it versus the timing of it.
Yeah, I don't think timing is a huge difference either way. I agree with you there. It's interesting though to think about that, like, and I'll do a callback to our old buddy Dan Monroe, right? Casino Healthcare is his book, and he said, no, the system's not broken. It's functioning exactly the way it was designed to work, and it was designed in a very inefficient and dysfunctional with perverse incentive fashion that, and like you said, there's someone that's probably benefiting or some regulation that's requiring this totally abhorrent
Right.
action or confusing misalignment that you're like, why would this make sense at all? And usually there is an explanation. That's why I think, a lot of founders and startups don't understand is they're like, this doesn't make any sense. We should do it. And if you say this doesn't make any sense, then you need to talk to some more people to know why does this make sense, right? We all understand it's wrong, but why in this environment is this happening? And understanding that is what's going to be key to being successful in startups. And many of them go in just wild-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go at it and saying, we're going to make this better because it doesn't make sense. And you're like, well, then you didn't dig deep enough to really
Yeah.
understand why it is and make sure that those stakeholders that you're trying to screw, let's be honest, like that you're going to ruin their business, how they're going to react to whatever you're doing and how your customer's going to react because they often are in some sort of relationship with the person you're trying to overtake. So yeah, I think diving into that and understanding it is really the key. And you can't just say, oh, healthcare is too big, it's too expensive, it's $1 trillion opportunity, and like I want my piece of it. It's like, wait a minute, that's tough.
Well, so on a related question to that, John, what area of or aspect of healthcare do you think startups underestimate the most? Like I mean, I've talked about one in term, and you've talked about one where you just misinterpret the fact that something doesn't exist as a lack of no, like a lack of anyone trying to fix it, right? What else, is an area that they startups typically underestimate?
Yeah, we talk about the sales cycle, but I'll just dive in another element of the sales cycle in the long sales cycle, and that is they think that there's one buyer.
Mm.
Like that is a really common one with startups. They're like, oh yeah, if I just get to XYZ, the CIO, the director of pop health, and they underestimate the fact that there's 10 people at an organization that all have to agree that this is a good idea. And if any one of them says, I don't think we should do this, then they can kill the deal for everyone else. And there's a lot of reasons why they could kill the deal. So I think that's a really big one for them, is knowing that, hey, the buying process in an organization is long and involves multiple people. There's almost no impulse buys in healthcare, right? Like I guess that kind of do no harm means we aren't going to impulse buy something, to be able to do it. We need the committee because we want to make sure that we're doing no harm. So I think that's probably the biggest one that I see.
Yeah, that's a good one actually. That's one I teach a lot as well about, committee. It's a committee always, because you need clinical, you need operations, you need whoever your users are to get on board. And you're right, any one of them could veto the deal. The one for me that is a big underestimation is just having a good ROI is not enough in healthcare. I mean, it's
Mm-mm.
helpful, don't get me wrong, it's helpful, but saving zero point 0.1 of an FTE is not that compelling, right? Like that's not moving the needle significantly enough. Even saving one FTE is not that significant, especially if that FTE isn't a high dollar FTE. Like if you're saving a biller, maybe because they're expensive and hard to find, hard to keep. But if you're saving like a porter, like they don't get paid a lot, right? And so when you look at the overall budget, to your point, you know, and people have to consider like, okay, do I invest in A or B? And A saves me one FTE, but I can save a clinician because I don't have to hire one that I'm missing, right? Versus an FTE over here. Well, hey, I'm sorry, the one that's saving me the porter's time is the one getting dropped, right? Even though it is I'll call it a compelling ROI, at least on paper. So, and the other thing too is that I talk about a lot is, you know, you're selling, let's say you're selling software or a digital solution, you are going to be compared against, well, if I don't spend money on your solution, could I hire two more nurses? If I don't spend money
Mm.
on your solution, can I get an extra CT scanner? It doesn't seem fair, right? Because you look, is your value as compelling as a CT scanner? I doubt most software will be able to stand up to that comparison. Yet that is what happens, right? Because not because the CIO isn't arguing for you. It's because the CIO is up against the chief of surgery or the chief medical officer who's going, guys, I need a new CT scanner, and because I need to improve patient volumes and all this other stuff. So, like, hey, unless your software is going to help with the same magnitude, like I'm going to get that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like that one a lot. And I actually think the biller is probably still not enough ROI. Probably needs to be 10 billers, right? Like to be frank, like, it has to, accelerate the really expensive ortho surgeon to allow them to do 5 more surgeries, 10 more surgeries. Then maybe you can, you have a compelling argument, going upstream to that more expensive one. I think we could do probably 5 podcasts on this topic, by the way. 5 episodes easy, because there are so many problems, but I'll combine two. One is that a successful pilot doesn't mean they're actually going to implement it. That's confusing to people. Like a pilot, has lots of other questions. Can it scale? Is this true? Is it going to work across industry, across specialties and locations and all that, right? Like a pilot doesn't mean they're fully in. And then the other one they always underestimate is, hey, once they sign on the dotted line, how quickly are they going to get going? They think, oh yeah, and they even share that picture, which by the way is 100% a mistake. If you go in and say we have a turnkey solution, you can just turn it on. You don't need anything on your end, and everyone in every CIO in healthcare will be like, well, then that means you don't understand our process, because at a minimum you got a CISO. And then you got the, to look over the security. You got the infrastructure, you got the finances, you got the EHR integration, you got the, compliance, you got the training of staff, you got, like all of those things are things that, require the staff to take part and be part of the implementation. So it's never turnkey. You could say it's easier than others, maybe that's fine. So yeah, the pilot's one thing. The second is to implement it just takes longer. And we've seen this over and over. They may even sign on the dotted line and send you the money, and then they might sit on it for 6 months. a year. Oh, wait, the Epic upgrade's coming. I got to do that. That's going to be take precedence over something else, right? Or, some other regulation comes in and now they got to deal with that regulation rather than implementing your solution. And so, like it's a long process to get implemented and people forget that, and many startups need that validation. They need it implemented so that they can say that XYZ organization is using us, and you won't get it until a lot later. So that happens a lot as well.
I'll add two more quickly, but you're right. We should probably spend a few
Yeah.
episodes talking about this. But one is, I think a lot of startups underestimate how much it actually takes to do integration and the value of integration with existing
Oh, yeah.
systems, right?
And
Like
how
you,
expensive.
and it's exactly expensive in time, in cost, right? They don't realize a lot of these EHRs are walled gardens, or even if they're not walled gardens, they may not have the APIs or the plumbing that you need to do what you want to do,
Yeah.
or that it may contravene a contract, like let alone the technology. So I think a lot of people underestimate that. And I think they underestimate the fact that clinicians don't want to do a copy paste or go to a different system or learn a new interface. They want to do everything in something they're used to. So that's a huge underestimation. I think the other piece that I would say is just around the procurement process, like to your point about like even when they sign on it online, well, getting to that point requires going through legal and through the CISO and through all these other audits, right?
Oh, are you SOC 2 certified? Do you have high trust? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All these other things that you have to comply with, which if you're not aware, can catch you off guard. You've done all the hard work to get someone to, take a chance on your software, maybe to do a pilot, or your device to do a pilot, only to run into, oh, you have to be SOC 2, or like, or I'm on this level, high trust. Like, are you? And because everything I'm implementing going forward is this, and then yeah, that's a bit of a challenge. That's a bit of a challenge.
Definitely.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Healthcare IT Today with John Lynn and Colin Hung. Today, we're talking about healthcare startups. And if you're a startup, you definitely need to check out our 2026 Sway Health Live event. At this special conference, you'll be learning marketing strategies that actually work so you don't waste your time and your money on dead marketing tactics. Learn more at Sway Health/events. So, John, have there been any startups that have impressed you recently?
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? We hear about a lot of companies, and I think, and I'll speak for me. I won't speak for you, Con. I'm a bit of a skeptic. Like I've seen so many that you can see the holes, and I always tell them I'm going to be brutally honest with you because if I tell you why your baby's ugly, right? Like as a entrepreneur, anyone that tells you your baby's ugly, entrepreneurs are going to hear that and say either you're wrong because you're misunderstanding the market, which is fine, you can have that belief, or you're going to say, wow, they're right. Now how do I overcome that? That's what an entrepreneur does, is overcomes the things that people highlight. So anyway, so I've been through a lot of, and so it is actually harder, and especially because I know the path they have to go through. But one really stood out to me, and that's Diligent Robotics. And by the way, I'm using a pretty broad definition of startup. They've been around a number of years, which in healthcare, that still feels like a startup. Like I'm at least going through Series A or B, like so that's still a startup for me in the healthcare world. But I love Diligent Robotics. They create this humanoid robot, humanoid in the sense it has a arm to be able to go around. The robot's called Moxie, and it will go around. And initially they created it to resupply the supply closets, thinking like that's what they wanted. And as they did that, everyone's like, well, could the robot just run this sample down to the lab, or could the robot go pick up the drug from the pharmacy so I don't have to run down there? And they're like, yeah, we can do that. And so in some ways it was an easier problem. You don't have to restock and do all those things, but in some ways it was a harder problem because now it has to push the elevator. It's got to go through security and swipe its security badge, which is interesting to think about. It needs to open doors, right? Like it needs to be able to do all of these things that could be more challenging, and why it needs to be a humanoid and have the arm to be able to do it. But when you hear the way they've implemented it and how useful it is, right? How many nurses go running around a hospital trying to just deliver stuff or pick up stuff? Like it makes sense why it's so useful and powerful. So I loved their implementation of it. That was really interesting. And I'll throw out one others, which I mean, you could put almost every AI medical scribe in the startup category because I mean, the whole industry is a year and a half since it really exploded. I mean, some were working on it well before that, before we had the fully automated AI, but about a year and a half we've had that. And there was an interesting one called Found, FOWND. And, they're early. We're talking early startup. So this is my early startup for you, Colin. It's like really early in that stage, but it's a bunch of PTs that said, hey, this is an opportunity to create something special for PTs. And I actually think there is an opportunity because the PT workflow is so different than many other clinicians and people like that, that if they stay focused on solving that PT use case and using AI, using computer vision in PT is huge because you can actually watch the exercise. You can see, are they touching the right leg or the left leg? You can verify, right? Like if they go all in on that, I don't think the other AI medical scribes will, and that could differentiate them and be a pretty cool opportunity, let alone doing it for the patient at home and tying in all of that because the PT happens at home as much as it happens in the actual, PT office. So anyway, that was a cool one. I loved the focus. It's a cool opportunity. Sure, there's others playing in the space as well, but if they really take it to that next level, I think they could have potential.
No, I like that, and you're right. I mean, startup does not mean someone with an idea in a garage, right? Or maybe someone who doesn't even have the first funding. Startup in healthcare could be someone, as you pointed out, been in there for 5 to 6 years already, right? And
Yeah.
has some traction. Um, so there's a couple for me that fall into that category. And I've been a fan of a company called Scanslated.
Mm.
They make a tool that basically uses AI and natural language processing to interpret radiology reads and radiology reports for patients, right? It kind of teaches patients what those words mean, whether or not they should be worried about it, essentially, right? And so, Dr. Befera and company, they've done some really cool things. I consider them a startup, even though they've been around for a long time. So, and they do have customers, so good on them. Um, and now I'm going to mention a few other companies now. Full disclosure, I do, work with these companies as an advisor, or have worked with them as an advisor through some of the hubs that I work with here in Canada. So there's a company I'm very excited about called FlutterCare. They're in the femtech space. They make a device that basically is a band that helps monitor fetal movement for moms. And right now it's targeted at people who, are worried about that, but also medically there might be a concern. So this band is a replacement for counting, which is sort of the method that people use today, is count the movements and the kicks manually. This band will do it automatically. So I'm pretty excited about that company. Fantastic founder, really, really good progress. There's another company called Medasist, which is really helping pharmacies and pharmacists be more productive and able to do more things. Like pharmacists are now starting to become a more prominent part of the healthcare system, right? In terms of common ailments and doing some things that maybe you don't have to go to see a doctor for, right? I think that'll increase, and they make some software tool that helps with that. And then I'll mention one last one. It's a company called Able Innovations, which makes like a basically an automated patient transporter.
Wow.
So like a robot, it basically will come, and actually there's always someone there because of safety, but all they have to do is push a button and it will slide under the patient and then move them onto the device, and then you can transport them. So
Wow.
no more lifting, no more, and it's an amazing technology that they've invented, and they're getting a lot of interest from a lot of companies. So, those are three that I'm pretty impressed, or four that I'm pretty impressed with, and and definitely in that startup world.
Wow. Saving nurses' backs one lift at a time. There's a guy in my church that his wife is wheelchair bound, and I see him lifting her out of the truck, and he's got to be 68, 70, something like that. And he's lifting her and putting her in the chair, and I'm just like, wow, he's done this his whole life. And yeah, anyway, that's an amazing innovation. I would look at some of the kind of front door AI
Mm,
bot ones as well that are super
yeah.
interesting. Yossi Health, they recently announced some of their AI solutions on top of their kind of self check-in, form filling out solutions. what's interesting about Yossi is they've been super quiet. They've just been sitting there working, and it's funny. Their announcement kind of highlighted that, like, hey, we don't want to be the loudest, we don't want to be the most flashy, we want to be the most trusted. And I actually loved that approach because that is who they are, and that you should embrace the culture of your company. That's probably a good feedback for startups as well. Like, who you are matters, and that it's going to show one way or another. And if you try to fake it, it probably is not going to work. So I think it's interesting that they are slowly going into that, AI solutions front end for the patients and engaging them. I'll be interested to learn more about their chatbot. You know, uh, Hyro as well, right? HYRO from out of Israel. They're doing some really interesting things with chatbots as well and being able to do it. And kudos to them. They recently came out with a free offering. It's a free chatbot to be able to help organizations reach out to their patients that are impacted by the one big beautiful bill or whatever that's called. That's taking away a lot of insurance for a lot of organizations and impacting these organizations that the patients no longer have insurance. And so they offered that for free to be able to do that outreach to the patients to kind of minimize the impact of what was happening. So I thought that was a pretty cool way to approach it, and it makes sense, right? Like, how many are doing being proactive about how the one big beautiful bill is impacting their patient population? They know it's going to impact their finances, but are they doing anything about it? So I love that they're kind of offering this more proactive way to find out, like, hey, what are you doing and how can we help you?
I love the team at Yossi as well. I had a chance to interview them when I was at the Oracle Health Summit recently. So, yeah,
Nice.
totally. They're just toiling away, working away, which is probably one of the best things to do if you're a startup founder
Solve
right now
problems.
in healthcare. Just keep plugging away. So, on that note, we're at the end here, John. What's one piece of advice that you would give to a healthcare startup right now?
If we just give it, solve problems that people care about, right? Like, that's the thing. And I think here's the best piece of advice. Don't trust a doctor, and don't trust an administrator. Don't trust, like, I've seen this over and over. They talk to one doctor or their uncle's a doctor, their mom, whatever, right? Like, they have all sorts, they have one conversation and that one person says this is a problem. And you should not trust that from one person. Instead, you need to go validate that from 20 people, 30 people, including administrators, including, the nurses, including all of the people that are going to be involved in your solution, the rev cycle manager, if it's rev cycle, the HIM professional, if it's records, whatever it was, right? Like, you need to understand that this is a problem that is abstracted across multiple organizations. Far too many startups I see hear from one person, say, oh, this is a problem. They solve that problem, and then they realize nobody else cares about it. In fact, I've even seen, and this is really embarrassing, it happened to a company that I stumbled upon and ended up kind of working with after that. But when they stumbled upon it, they solved a problem of secure text. And the doctor who said, this is a problem, I really want it. And it wouldn't be great if GPS would track the patient. They'd know I'm in the room and hey, I'm here. I could just solve the problem. They solved all of that problem. And guess what? That doctor didn't even use it. And you're like, okay, you didn't ask enough questions, right? That doctor wanted that, but did he really want it? And is that a problem that he wants solved? And more importantly, does he have the power to implement it? So that's the other piece of it when you're asking it is like, you want this, but can you pay for it? That's a separate question.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, you really have to dig down deep. You have to be almost like an investigative journalist, a true crime person, right? And get right to the bottom of like, why is this not fixed? Like, why does this problem still persist in today's world? Like, why do we still have faxes? It's not because there's not better technology. It's because of other reasons, right? And I won't spoil I won't do the spoiler. Go figure it out, right? But you need to dig down deeper because you're right. Otherwise, you could end up developing something that is not really A, someone's going to pay for, or B, actually needed, or is even possible to implement because of all these other structural problems inside healthcare, right? Um, the one piece of advice I would give to people to healthcare startups is it kind of related to what you're saying, John, is you need a diverse set of advisors or a diverse set of voices that you're listening to. You can't just depend on one. And I mean diverse in the sense of you need the administrator, you need the doctor, you need all these people to be able to tap into to as you're developing your solution. You're definitely going to need them in order to impress any VC, because anybody who's thinking about investing, if you're not from the industry, that is already going to be a knock against you. So you need these people on your staff or in your advisory team in order to even be appealing. But most of all, I would say you just really need to talk to people. Right?
Yeah.
Like I can't tell you how many people I talk to that are in the software space who've never heard of HIMSS. And I'm like, how is that possible? Like, they're 5 years in and they've never been to HIMSS. I'm like, you have no idea what you're up against. Like, I say the words epic and they don't even know what I'm talking about. Right? Like, again, it's just because they're working in a bubble. Maybe they're working with a couple of organizations that don't use Epic, right? But you realize I remember the first time I went to HIMSS and my jaw was dropping, but that's what you're up against. So anyways, that's my advice to them. Go to the conference.
Yeah, and moving upscale just a little bit, if you're a larger one, the one that I often see is play to your strengths.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, oh, I need to do sales like the certain way. And it's like, hey, if you're more of a marketing organization with sales supported, then that's fine. Do that, right? If you're more of a sales company and marketing supportive, do that. And it will change over time as it grows. You know that better than I do. But like play to your strengths, know who you are and execute on who you are.
Well, John, we're at the end of another episode. Thanks to all of you who tuned into this episode of Healthcare IT Today. You can find more details about our show by checking out the programs page on healthcarenowradio.com. And please share your voice and engage with the community at healthcareittoday.com and on social media using the hashtag HITSM. I'm Colin Hung, along with my friend and Health IT collaborator, John Lynn. Thanks for listening and have a great week.